This is the MetaView, the audio companion to my newsletter by the same name. And I'm your host, Anne V. Muller-Thaler. So tell me, when was the last time that someone asked you to tell your story? Did you flinch? Did you start sweating a bit? I know I do. Or did you shower the other person with a neat recap of your life to date in 90 seconds flat? Now, if you're not on Instagram, you may not know that I've been testing different creatives and messaging on the platform with very mixed feedback. My Story of Anne reel, however, received much love. So thank you if you are one of the kind folks who left sweet notes in my comments. Now, for a self-confessed queen of long form, queen of my own fictional castle, of course, short form messaging reminds me of when I picked up tennis again in my mid-40s. I hadn't run after a ball since my teens, and I got the gear first because much of tennis is about the outfit, as I'm sure you know. I'm thinking of Naomi Osaka's Paris clay court fashion shows. And as it turns out, I'm obsessed. I love it, love it, love it. Also, I'm not very good at it. Hopefully my sheer enthusiasm and determination will see me through to intermediate level. Now, for me, distilling my thoughts and methodologies into an IG caption, focused as I am, as always, on insights, story, communication, tends to come out in the shape of ideas. Slippery things, ideas. They are the stuff that our gray matter doesn't like to hold on to. But determined as I was to break through, I landed on an example that I want to share from my podcast. I had the aha. So I've interviewed over 100 people for Out of the Clouds and a dozen for the Meta interview. And I was thinking, what stories have stayed with me? What do I actually retain from those conversations? And the shape of the answer finally turned into a gritty, textured image, something worth passing on to you. Not too long ago, I sat for a pre-interview conversation with a very interesting and attractive potential guest. Mid-30s, shaggy blonde hair, very nice demeanor. We'd met in person and found ourselves on Zoom discussing what we would cover should we do an interview together. Very brainy with a scientific background, he has 2 degrees and a master's, and he spoke mainly in concepts. Now, I revel in the abstract, and I knew enough about his field to enjoy the exchange, but I sensed an uneasiness in myself. My mind turned to my audience, to you, essentially, because how would you resonate with what he was saying to me? Now, he wasn't mumbling his words. One could even say he was really well spoken, though his speech was peppered with a lot of, you know. But since he was offering no anchor, no story or image or even a metaphor for my mind to chew on, I found myself filling in with the examples. And I actually found myself going all in, painting a thorough picture, and I won't share the details given the specifics of our conversation. Plus, he may be a guest soon. And so there I saw it on my screen. I saw the impact of my word picture. His energy became brighter, a smile spread across his face, and his hand ran through his hair. And the more I layered on my story to illustrate the point, the more he leaned into that Zoom frame. He said something like, "This sounds great. I'd love to hear more." I had him hooked on an illustration of his topic. Now that stayed with me, and of course it would, because I love to speak in ideas too. Actually, my coach keeps on telling me off because I do that all the time. I should say all my first drafts are short, tight, and super dry, just like a dry martini, which, by the way, I find very hard to swallow. A lot of us, myself included, wish for better coverage. We'd like press, podcasts. We want better adoption of our ideas or better engagement on social media, or we want a better job a raise, more opportunities. But how often are we making people lean in? Someone I spoke to not long ago said communication was like hot air, and I could not disagree more. Communication is what you make of it. Like anything you work on and craft, it can be shallow and forgettable, or it can carry a gritty, gritty thumbprint that says, yes, this work is mine. Now for the examples. Last year, my friend Serge Mouangue granted me an interview, and it was a huge honor because Serge is a kind and brilliant artist and also someone very private. He said yes to me, not so much to the opportunity of being on a podcast. You will not find Serge on Instagram like I am, or on any other network. You will, however, be able to watch his TEDx talk or discover that he was a TEDx fellow or find an article on his Wafrica project in Patek Philippe magazine. FYI, earning a feature in the uber-exclusive Geneva biannual watch Glossy is a bright signal of exactly how brilliant Serge is. Our interview started as all of my interviews do. I asked him to tell me his story. Now, he could have said, "Hi, I'm Serge. I was born in Yaoundé, Cameroon. And when I was 7, I moved to Paris with my family." Instead, this is what he offered. And yes, it's worth hearing the words directly from him.
So I was born in Cameroon, right? I was born in Yaoundé, which is the capital of Cameroon. Regardless, my dad is from Douala, which is, let's say, the biggest city in Cameroon. And my mom is from Bamileke. So Bamileke, the Bafang people are in the west of Cameroon, whereas the Douala people are in the central south, so to speak. There's 100 kilometers between both. Regardless, I'd give you a very quick example of the diversity we have in Cameroon is the language, first of all. So in my mother's dialect, you count from 1 to 10 like this. So listen, it sounds like this. Etc., etc. In my father's dialect, which is, 100 kilometers away, it's Douala dialect. It sounds like that. Etc., etc. So
it's impressive because I can't even sound any similarities between the two.
And one of them sounds a little bit Chinese, I would say.
Absolutely.
Especially the first one. Anyway, so in Cameroon, you have around 250 different dialects. And we use English to communicate in the West mainly, and French in the rest of the country. But every person can understand 3 to 4 different dialects that are run around where they live. And that's how they get by every day to buy groceries and to go to the market, to navigate everything. So everybody has that already. So already at the very beginning, I come from that kind of different sound, variety of ethnicity, and that habitates me until today, that diversity, the richness of diversity.
Now, can you see why his introduction has stayed with me? In 2 minutes, he transported me, and hopefully you too, to Cameroon, through his ears, no less. Not only that, but if I ask you to name a leading trait or perhaps a core value of his art, what would you say it is? That's right, richness of diversity. Now, at that point in the podcast, I was beaming from within, and I felt, of course, glued to my screen, waiting for Serge to tell me more. I was leaning in both emotionally from the surprise of how different those dialects sounded, and intellectually, the richness of diversity. I had a sense of the goodness of what would come next. Without needing to listen to the podcast again, I'll tell you that I also have this image that I remember of Serge as a boy in the apartment that he shared with his family, an apartment that was nearly empty because they had very little money at the time. As a result, the future designer spent a lot of time imagining the furniture and the appliances that could fill the space. He drew and drew, and now he has me remembering the origin story for his early career in design. And just as I was saying it, I got like a little shiver on my arm. That's the gift, the image, the empty rooms, the scrawny 12-year-old drawing, imagining. That said, you should really listen to the whole podcast if you haven't already. Not long after that recording, I worked with a client who was keen to get PR and podcast appearances around the launch of his novel. So he met me on Zoom. He was delightfully holding a full page of questions for a British magazine who had confirmed him for a feature. With my super PR hat on, I announced I didn't want him to write his answers. Instead, I suggested I ask the questions and we record the answers to see what comes up. Anyway, in our case, the interview started with a question stack. Tell me about yourself, where are you from? And there were a few more. So he answered. He said, I grew up in northern Scotland, and I stopped him right there. The question itself didn't lend itself to storytelling. So it took me a minute, but I actually rephrased it and asked him instead, what can you tell me about where you're from and what was it like growing up there? He took a beat and then he said, well, growing up in the Scottish Highlands means you have to be pretty comfortable with nature. You have to be okay with being outdoors in all 4 seasons. So I grew up really appreciating being outdoors. Now, I've not been to Scotland. Now, I've not been to the Scottish Highlands, but since that day, I've had an image of them in my mind. I still do. Does it correspond to reality? Does it matter? No. These words left their mark on me, just as Serge's word did with his dialect story. And thanks to him, I nurture a delightful curiosity about Cameroon and the languages spoken by its people. Now, about the quality of the questions or the reframe. One could argue that the journalist could have asked more interesting questions. Think of the way I changed them. Or equally, you could say, Anne, you could do better than ask your guests, tell me your story as the first questions on the podcast. Maybe. But the responsibility, it lies on both sides. It's as much on the interviewer as it is on the interviewee to produce an interesting piece. You want people to remember you? Give them something to remember you by. And if you start thinking, oh, I don't have anything like that to tell. Notice how my client gave me an outline. Nothing like a complex structure or a narrative arc. He brought something out of his lived experience, his psyche, in textured, illustrated story shape. You have to be okay with being outdoors in all 4 seasons is the start of a story. I'm leaning in. Are you? Serge, however, like some of my friends and clients, might emerge from an interview thinking, oh, I don't know who'll enjoy listening to my ramblings about what I do and where I'm from. Because putting ourselves out there, especially when we get, intimate, long form, and we use story shape instead of idea shape, it can feel really uncomfortable. The potential side effect is a vulnerability hangover. That's the way Brené Brown puts it. But it's also the place from which we can make a mark on others. So this is your invitation. Choose your camp. Hide behind the glossy, slippery armor of ideas or show us the shape of who you are. Now, next week, I'm offering for the first time a new masterclass. Story is the strategy. It's free. Masterclass means it's less participatory than my Story of You workshop, so you can clean the house, water the plants. That's what I do when I listen to a course, or simply lean back and listen. It's free because it's the first time I'm delivering it, so you'll be my guinea pigs. And I don't want to keep out anyone who could benefit from the new perspectives I offer on the what, the why, the how of storytelling, or the difference between that's interesting and tell me more. Now, in this online session, do not expect me to talk about narrative structure or story arc. This is not a craft talk. about writing short stories. Instead, expect my favorite hot takes on how to make people lean in the next time someone asks you, tell me your story. If you can't make it live, the replay will be shared the following day. I hope to see you there. Almost forgot. Before you go, I'm going to share my free, very own handcrafted PR trick. If you've ever been sent interview questions in writing, do not answer them by writing the answers. Please voice record yourself first. Ask yourself the question, sit with it, and answer each question aloud first. You can use Zoom, voice notes, you can message yourself, whatever works. And then you rewrite, tidy up, not rewrite, your answers from the transcript. Now, it's a bit more work up front, but it always over-delivers because you end up sounding like yourself rather than sounding like a press release. And I want to share that one of my clients landed a splendid 2-page spread the last time we used that technique. So try it. Until next time.